Hey there, everybody. Parkes Ousley here with Inven Global, and I am joined by Yae-won Jin. You are the head of product at the LCK, and we're going to be talking about globalization in esports, and specifically how it pertains to the LCK. But I'd like to give you a moment before we get into it to
Mhm.
kind of introduce yourself and what you do over there, so that everybody has kind of a general understanding. Hey there, everybody. Parkes Ousley here with
Thank you, Parks. I'm Yae-won Jin, and I'm a esports broadcast global producer at Riot Korea, and it's responsible for live production, content production, and talent management for LCK global production. And I always sometimes coordinate LCK productions for international events like Worlds or MSC, and collaborate with other regions to connect the league scene globally.
Yeah, I'm really hoping that we get to see some of your work later this year at Worlds, since we didn't get to do that at MSI. Um,
Mhm.
that's really cool. I think you obviously have a very interesting position uh, because of the global network that esports has, which
Mhm.
is kind of unique, and probably you come up with a lot of issues that you don't really have like a traditional sports scene or something like that to
Mhm.
look onto. So I want to get into that a little bit about like some of the weird things that you might experience um, when it comes to like talking to an English audience from a completely different culture. But before we get into that, I think it's kind of important to talk about the LCK's history a little bit, and like the identity of the LCK in itself, and then
Mhm.
we can expand on how the other people view it. So, what is kind of the LCK's like understanding of itself? What's the history there that you guys are working with?
Um, I think in terms of a global landscape, I think LCK stands in a very unique and interesting position. We are the league with the most glorious history and abundant stories, like Home Move Faker and many, many other legends. And although some might think that reminiscing on the good old days seem like dwelling in the past, many of the industry professionals and personalities I speak with still believe that KR still owns the best individual players, and I do trust them. And even during this summer split, we're seeing a really interesting attempts that are happening within LCK. So I think the future of LCK is still bright. And also, we are in the process of franchising. And I guess business wise, Korea might fall behind in terms of capital size,
Mhm.
given the size of the local market. Yet, Korea is a country that owns strong cultural presence globally also. And for example, like BTS, K-pop, and K-dramas and films, and which is also very beneficial in perspectives of content production for us. So I guess at this stage, we're not yet fully embracing the potential of LCK in global market, but
Mhm.
we're pretty major in local, um, but still very niche in global landscape.
Mhm.
Um,
I
our
think
yeah.
I think the history obviously is
Mhm,
something that is very unique to the LCK.
mhm,
I think the fact that you guys have a player like Faker
mhm,
that even when we look across to other teams who win worlds,
mhm,
everybody right now is talking about Doinby because
mhm,
he's the most recent mid laner to win.
mhm,
I think the reason why people are talking about Doinby is
mhm,
because of Faker,
mhm,
because we're looking at the mid laner because
mhm,
Faker was the star. And so we're comparing Doinby to Faker. And not always directly, because
mhm,
Doinby is very special. And maybe we would have talked about him anyway. But I think that's kind of a pull that the LCK has. That anytime someone does something, we're still measuring them to the LCK.
mhm,
And could they have beaten this team? Could they have beaten Samsung Galaxy when they were in their prime? Or could they have beaten Faker this year or this year or this year? So I think that's something that's really interesting that you guys have. Uh, and the other thing I want to touch back on, the kind of the uniqueness of your
mhm,
position, is we don't see this in other sports
mhm,
necessarily. Like maybe in soccer or football.
mhm,
It's interesting. We're in a globalization conversation, and we have two different names for the same
mhm,
sport, depending on where you are in the world.
mm,
but like people don't play baseball globally.
mm,
That's kind of an American thing. And
mm,
Koreans actually play
mm,
baseball, but then cricket is really big in some parts of the world, but not in America and not in
mm,
some other countries.
mm,
And it's kind of like soccer, but even then they have this really strong, like each league itself is really big. Like the Premier League is a really big thing.
mhm,
But for us, the LCS means nothing without the
mm,
LCK and without the LPL and without the LEC.
mm,
Like we don't have like a big like Cloud9 won this year
mhm,
and they made history, but everyone's question is what would happen at MSI? No one cares that they won. No one cares about that. It's what would happen at MSI, and then we didn't get
mm,
MSI, and everyone's like losing their minds
mm,
because we don't know, because that's how connected we all are,
mm,
and that's not really a thing that happens in other sports or in other
mm,
industries, really, even.
mm.
So, how does that change your job? Like how without having MSI this year, how does that impact what you were able to do to help globalize the LCK?
Um, just to start with the Faker question earlier on,
Sorry.
I guess like Faker is more like Michael Jordan of basketball.
Mhm.
So of course we're not gonna see someone who has that much of marketing power pretty soon, I think, because it's really been difficult for like even for LCK, the local market, to find someone to replace Faker in some ways because his presence is such huge and he's a legend. And I don't think anyone in near future will be able to measure up to Faker, but I think we'll see a lot more new stars coming up in next years or so. And it's similar in traditional sports too. And going back with the traditional sports comparison, I think it's just esports' innate nature of the globalness that it owns. Because when you think about it really carefully, it's almost a miracle. Like notion of competitive play has existed as long as ancient sports, but it
Mhm.
has never been something people from a whole world could watch together and are excited about together. And I mean, we sometimes take it for granted, but I still remember the days when I used to stroll into a local arcade after elementary school and stand behind people because I didn't have enough money to play all the time. So I stand behind people and watch them play fighting games. And a few years later in middle school, it was like more like dance games like DDR or Pump. Uh, I really sound like a boomer now, but anyways, that's
That's fine.
um so after that, like thankfully in Korea, we could watch earliest esports leagues on TV, but pretty much in all of other places, had to use softwares like Shoutcast to broadcast audio over the internet, like radio, and then sync it with the video that they let you like download it somewhere else. And it's only been like 10 plus years ago, and one of this screens in our control room shows all the different channels where LCK is simultaneously being delivered in many different languages like Korean, English, French, German, and they all got their own like chat rooms too. And it's really just impresses me every time I see it. So I guess that like in esports, we're just like global in born nature. But like for me, what globalization of LCK would mean more like content globalization. It's a process of altering our contents. And because we are based on the KR broadcast and then we're sub-broadcast of the KR feed, I think it's altering our content and delivery to fit the needs of our global audience.
Mhm.
And losing MSI has been, I was disappointed,
Yeah.
but with that, we also found new possibilities that we couldn't think about before. And I think this like whole difficult situation we're facing together as a globe is actually pushing us to work on things like new technologies, like LCS is doing a remote broadcast, and MSC we had because we couldn't meet together, we had to manually control the ping to like
Mhm.
30, and try new things, and I think it was a huge success. It's not been easy to prepare it, but I think we're definitely discovering new possibilities that where we can move on from here.
Yeah, I mean, COVID-19, of course, has
Mm,
probably made your job even more difficult. And of course, losing MSI is tough.
mhm,
But the MSC was incredible. And that was
mhm,
something I think, and I don't know, obviously I don't know the whole planning and when things
mhm,
happen, but I know fans here where I'm from in
mhm,
America were like, oh, we really want MSI because we want
mhm.
Cloud9, but we also
Yes.
we want to see these other talents that we're so
Mhm,
familiar with. And then they got the MSC, which was so cool. So I don't know. I mean, just praise to you
mhm.
and the team for being able to put that together. Thank you for that.
Thank
Uh,
you.
I think I kind of think of the LCK as like a big brother uh,
Mhm,
to the other leagues because I think a lot of times you'll see like maybe a younger brother is watching their older brother like play sports or something when they grow
mhm,
up and they're like, I want to be like him. And
mhm,
that's kind of what the LCS is like. And I think that's what the LEC and LPL are kind of like watching the LCK be so successful. But I know you said something about like the talent isn't 100% there. It's not, they haven't won in the last couple of years. So um, then it's like the little brother is now in the high school and the older brother hasn't been playing sports in a
mhm,
little bit. So when they meet up, the younger brother is actually a little better.
mhm,
So maybe the LCS is like a really, really younger brother,
mhm,
but the LPL, I guess, has already kind of
mhm.
overtaken the LCK. What does that do as far as you trying to connect with the audience? Because people are now talking a lot more about the LPL and the style of play they have. There's a
Mhm.
lot of interest there, which takes a little from the LCK. So, what does that mean?
Um, that could mean a drop in viewership from casual fans, I guess, for me. But eventually, I'm seeing more of a potential in LCK these days. I've been really sorry, like I was really sad during the Worlds last year, and then also that not having a Korean team on like MSC finals, it was a huge hit for me too. But with the new teams like Dynasty or like Sarhaeon Prince, we're seeing more of a, I don't want to call it like very brave, like more of a LEC style, LPL style plays that are actually working in LCK. And I think after MSC, more players are watching other reasons plays. And I had a chance to talk to Naguri recently, and he's like all into LPL these days too. So I think I think we're still strong in terms of like managing the game, the whole game, and controlling like what we want to do as a strategy. But I think individual like plays or in terms of like team fights and stuff, I think a lot more of LCK players are watching other reasons play and learning from it. And considering that KR players are really talented as an individual players and like they have a lot of skill sets, I think those kind of efforts will actually drive LCK into a better future. So I'm not that worried about the current situation.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm sitting here in
Mm,
Los Angeles watching the
mm,
LCS every weekend. So when I do tune into the LCK,
mm,
I feel pretty good about you guys and your level of talent.
mm,
Um, I think something you mentioned earlier is the fact that you are still very respected and you are watched all over the
mm,
world. But I think you said it was still considered a niche market. So I wanted to ask
mm.
you about what you meant with that.
We do have a lot of people joining LCK from all over the world. Like, I did a little survey during the spring season, and out of like 68,000 and like 6,800 of the fans, and we asked where do you live in, and then we got like 126 countries, even all the way from Maldives and Fiji. and which I'm very grateful for. And just imagining someone from Maldives sitting in their like beach houses, and like it just warmed my heart. However, it also means we're dealing with unspecified masses from all different areas of the world. So that's where we face some of our biggest challenges in. But and our fan base is pretty hardcore compared to LCS or LEC, because they do have more of a casual fans joining in from their local areas. But for English production for LCK, the KR's viewers are not part of the English broadcast, so we don't have that huge local fan base. But because we're very hardcore and with high loyalty fan base, I think I'm considering it niche.
Hmm.
But still, this global niche is, in size wise, is much bigger than KR local markets. So I think that there is where the potential is.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Mm.
Um, yeah, that definitely does pose a challenge as well.
Mm-hmm.
The 129 countries or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it was. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine having to localize
Mm-hmm.
between that many.
Mm-hmm.
Seems impossible. What are your when you look at localization and how to connect, I guess, with all of these audiences, where's the list of priorities? Is there like a tier list, or like, oh, this is where the majority of the fans are, or this is what's easiest? How do you kind of decide how to spin the content, I guess?
I think the most like these our top two challenges is like cultural differences and language barrier. And as a reason, LCK production always has been very memey, even in KR production. So that also brings more challenges in like translating the content in both cultural and linguistic context. And sometimes it hinders our English viewers' enjoyment, sometimes makes them like cringe a lot. But I'm not gonna lie, the image of a Twitch chat with spammed web faces is pretty hilarious, and it's not always a bad thing. Even Dududunga used to get them with
Yeah.
WTFs in its early days, but I actually enjoy it. But after initial reaction passes, I get all the global team is all thinking what we can do differently or better next time to bridge this better.
Mhm.
And we'd definitely prefer to have our viewers type in like ROFL or like KR production pog instead of wall faces.
Yeah, I think there not to harp on this too much, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that's something the LCS is struggling with as well, and that's with our local audience, even not
Mm-hmm.
even not even talking about global. Um, so, which definitely also we're receiving a lot of what faces when some of our plays are viewed by
Mm-hmm.
other audiences who are used to maybe higher tier esports. But I think interesting thing there, obviously, you have content that is run on the Korean side. Like
Mm-hmm.
there was there's a K drama thing
Mm-hmm.
that you did with some players, and what's the benefit of running that for the English audience as well, rather than not? Like, is that something that you're like, yes, this is unique, this is our culture, this is
Mm-hmm.
something our fans love, so we want to share it? Or I imagine that's one of the things you're talking about when you're saying, what can we do differently in the future?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're spamming this chat. What's the kind of conversation around like that? That's something that's just very unique to Korean culture, like the K
Mm-hmm.
drama.
So when we were discussing about Bubu의 세계 production, and I guess like we already knew that it wasn't going to translate well into global audience, because it's like really based on the storyline of the drama, and which is also from Dr. Foster, from
Hmm.
like it's like UK drama actually that Korea made into K drama. And even Koreans with like without the knowledge of the storyline didn't get much of the stuff when they first saw it. And so one of the things we tried to do was, but I really wanted to show it to the global fans also, because that's like the spirit of LCK in Korea. And we're not afraid to be memed or like look funny, but we just want to makes you laugh and then enjoy this like whole storyline together, because it's all based on the like East League and West League thing that we used to have as a meme. And so one of the things we could do from the global side was to have our global casters actually act in it. So they weren't originally part of that production, but like we talked about it and then we tried to give them a role with actual sentences to speak with, and then they spoke in Korean, like half Korean, half English, and that was really funny for Korean side too. So I think that's the little things that we're trying to do, but like we also got a lot of well faces for that too.
Yeah, for sure. I know that the Korean part of our company shared that over
Mhm.
to me, and they're
Mhm.
like, just with no context, we're like, "What do you think about this?" And I was like, "I have no idea what's going on." Um, but I think that's a great,
Mm,
semi-solution that you have to get
mm,
some of the faces that they're familiar
mm,
with involved, so they have some connection there.
mm,
But what about the Dururunga thing? Because that was another one that you brought up earlier. What
mhm.
was the inspiration around that advertisement?
That was actually made by TF2 team in
Mhm.
Korea, and then they asked us to air it online, and we took their request. And student got like at first got all the like weird reactions from the KR side and global side also, but I guess it kind of echoed with LCK fan spirit, because like very memey and then light, and it's just like cute to watch them. And it also included so when we changed the lyrics and made it into an LCK song for our finals, we tried to incorporate as much memes as possible. And from the global side, it was Take It Away, that we specifically asked the Mush Venom, the artist, to please use this phrase for our global fans so they
Mhm.
can understand what's going on. So that's the kind of things that we're trying to do.
Mhm. Well, I thought that was very fun as
Mm,
well. I know that was kind of a big meme right when it
mm,
first released.
mhm,
I know you've brought it up a couple times, the meme side of the
mhm,
LCK, which obviously I have a hard time kind of understanding that when I watch the Korean broadcast.
mhm,
But I do know that it is very true on the global side.
mhm,
Uh, I know you mentioned earlier it's sometimes hard because memes can be very specific
mhm,
or sometimes hard to understand if you don't have the context around a situation,
mhm,
which might be hard if you're not in your native language. But
mhm.
also humor in general is something that's kind of pretty
Yes.
universal.
Mm.
Is that kind of the reason why it is a more lighthearted thing? Is that an intentional aspect of your
Mm.
broadcast to make sure that it's lighthearted so it's a little easier to connect with?
Um, yes and no. Yes, in terms of like our global broadcast being more casual because of the actual airtime in many other different like areas, and sometimes it's like really late at night and some people watch it like early in the morning, and then we didn't want to like just spam them with like seriousness, and we just want to like sort of provide some sort of like casual like enjoyment that they can watch when they're taking some time off. And it's not, and no, because it's not just like our intentions these days, but it's just LCK broadcast traditionally came up with, like even from the Doha and Monty eras. That's the kind of spirit that was originated and with Papa, and I guess we became sort of establishing our own characteristic. And then I guess like now I'm in the role to actually inherit that and then don't mess with that.
Yeah, yeah. don't let, or yeah,
Mm,
something about the status quo, and I don't know, there
mm,
was a phrase there, but I forgot.
mm,
Um, I think we were talking earlier about some of the, the unique content.
mm,
I know recently you started putting out a podcast,
mhm,
the Pog State, I think,
mm,
and that's doing pretty well. And that's
mm,
something that the LCS, we have so many podcasts, and so
mhm,
I don't know how well they're doing, obviously, and I don't know how
mm,
well they do compared to yours.
mm,
Um, why do you think that one is doing so well, especially if people
mm,
often come to the LCK expecting
mm,
the memes and stuff?
mm.
What's the situation around that?
So we knew that we lack in English content and wanted to do something because we don't have social media presence or like any other ways to listen to our viewers that much except the communities. We wanted to make a content that could actually connect our viewers to us like regularly, and then somewhere we can explain and give more context about the things that they were missing out.
Mm,
And also with the podcast we were able to discuss various of topics starting from like just like mentality or just meta, and it's been a great test bed for all of us too to understand what global fans want or not.
mhm,
So I think that's probably one of the reasons why it's been doing pretty well in terms of podcast market. It's been hitting like number one in like Apple Podcasts in like in game category in like many countries in Europe, Asia, and even I think we even got near like top 10 in the US too. So
yeah.
I think we're trying to find some sort of like universal appeal that works for both KR market and global market.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not easy to do as we've discussed. So, but it also does make sense. I think the
Mm,
other, helpful thing about that is if people are always having to have weird sleep schedules to watch the
mm,
LCK, a podcast is something they can listen to
mhm,
anytime. So I guess that's another kind of added benefit.
mm,
Um, I think I have a couple. I know we're like encroaching on six.
mm,
Well, six for me. Um, so I have a couple questions to rapid fire through, and then a
mm.
couple that maybe could be a little longer. First, do you ever have content that performs better globally than on the Korean side that wasn't necessarily expected to perform better globally? Is that ever a thing that you can kind of look at?
Tudurunga was one of the things that we didn't really expect from the global audience to actually be like really excited about, because like originally it was like all in Korean, and then we later after they were excited we made an English subtitle so that they can understand better.
Hmm. That's pretty funny.
Mm,
I wonder if there's maybe patterns as you keep doing more and
mhm,
more. There will be like patterns you can find.
mm,
Um, I know we've talked obviously a lot about the challenges, especially
mhm,
with localization and
mm,
the 129 different countries you now have to
mm,
pay attention to. What about the challenge of marketing new talent? I know you brought this up
mm,
earlier at the very beginning,
mhm,
but obviously Faker has history
mm,
and SKT has history.
mhm,
First off, were you concerned when SKT was like changing their name to T1? Because that's a really big thing. Like Dignitas
mm,
changed their logo and people got
mhm,
angry. SKT changed the name of their legacy.
mm,
They have Faker still though, so thank goodness. Um,
mm.
what are the thoughts? What happens when Faker leaves? What is the LCK going to do to make sure that there's still something to compare to always kind of draw back on?
Like I said earlier, I don't think anyone's gonna live up to Faker in anytime soon. But yeah, that's a thing that we talk about a lot too. Like, what are we gonna do after Faker? But thankfully, we're seeing more of an interesting characters in our player base, and I think we're not gonna have Jordan, but we might be able to find some of the new talents
Hmm.
like impressing enough, like global enough. But like I guess like it would really help if we could do better in international events and then raise more awareness toward their like professional plays.
Mhm. I think, obviously you can also look at
Mm.
what the LPL does since
Mm.
Uzi just retired.
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe that gives you a little bit more of breathing room, and if
Mm.
if the LPL survives, then the LCK will too, of course. Although hopefully Faker doesn't retire anytime soon, because I
Mm.
have not gotten tired of watching him play yet. And then there were a couple other like quicker questions I had. Were there any other kind of big challenges that you have that you're still working through? That's like, once we figure this out, maybe we can expand more, or maybe we'll have more meaningful content and
Mhm.
delivery to the global audience.
I guess like we're just like in the process of figuring out what to do. I only joined the company like a year ago, and before me there was no like I guess like no global team separate from the KR side. So we are working with whatever we could and trying to bridge cultural differences better, and then try to listen to the fans more and to understand what their needs are. That's why we're doing surveys and stuff. And I think we'll be the more like some of the new contents you'll be able to see like within this year, and then I think those new contents will also teach us a thing or two about where we should go next.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, thank you so much. I really
Mhm.
appreciate it. Is there any other further outlook on how you guys are doing? What hopefully, I mean, I know that Worlds obviously is a great place. Like, the big
Mhm.
international events are great times to advertise.
Mhm.
Like, this is Noguri. Like, you didn't know about him last year, but now
Mhm.
everybody does because he uses this rune and no one else does it. But now everybody's copying him. Um, other than Worlds,
Mhm.
any other like things that you're looking forward to as far as reaching out to more people?
Mm, I don't have anything solid to share with you right now, but I think there are some interesting discussions going in, and with given this like this like strange time, I think nothing's impossible. So I guess like please keep an eye on us and
Yeah.
we'll come up with something.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I
Mm.
think luckily there are so many eyes very willing
Mhm.
to consume content right now, because we are all,
Mm.
at least in the US, we're all still stuck at
Mm.
home for quite a while, I think.
Mm.
So thank you so much for the content that you have helped us be able to consume. But yeah, and thank you so much for coming online
Mm.
with us here. This was the last panel of the day. It's been a
Mhm.
very busy day for all of us at Inven Global,
Mm.
and I really appreciate you being a part of it. So thanks for that.
Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, of course. So that does it for us.
Mm.
I hope you all learned some stuff about the unique challenges of
Mm.
globalization. But yeah, thank you again for coming on. For all of you viewers out there, thank you for sticking around till the
Mm.
very end. I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to Nick DeRazio. He's been running the show, and I will let him close it out and let you all know what is happening tomorrow. Yeah, thank you all again so much.
I wish I found some better sounds no one's ever heard. I wish I had a better voice and sang some better words. I wish I found some chords in an order that is new. I wish I didn't have to rhyme every time I sang. Wish we could turn back time to the good old days when the mama sang us to sleep, but now we're stressed out.